Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another episode of On the Couch with Creatives. I say good morning because I'm here in the UK, but good afternoon or good evening if you're anywhere else in the world. I'm Melanie Perry.
I'm Julie Hyde-Mew.
And this is On the Couch with Creatives. Fans and followers of the show will know that we're part of the Creatives Group, the professional network for creative individuals everywhere. No matter where you are in the globe, we like to help you grow, connect, and develop your creative business. But this is On the Couch. So, Julie, who do we have on the couch today?
Well, today we are talking to Paul Waters, who is the author of Blackwatertown, a crime thriller set on the Irish border in the 1950s. Paul is also an award-winning BBC radio producer and the co-presenter of the award-winning podcast We'd Like a Word, which focuses on books and authors. Hello, Paul. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Lovely to be here with you both, Julie and Melanie.
Well, this is going to be an interesting chat because you're quite the cosmopolitan type. You grew up in Belfast during the Troubles. You were involved in cross-community peace groups and went on to report and produce for BBC Northern Ireland, BBC Radio 4, BBC Radio 5, Live, the BBC World Service, and Channel 5. So you've obviously drawn on your real-life experiences when it came to writing Blackwatertown.
Yes, I have. I used to hear it's set in a time a little bit before I was born, but I have heard lots of true stories from that time from people who were involved in a little known conflict back then, and in true crime, people who were in the police and other organizations around then. And they told me they used to share lots of stories that never made the newspapers or the history books because, frankly, they were too dodgy and they would get in trouble. And I thought some of these stories are just too good not to tell, but maybe I should share them in a fictional context rather than get everyone in big trouble. And so I took those real life stories that hadn't been told before and added my own imagination and created a completely fictional story. And it was kind of liberating because as a journalist, I've been telling other people's stories for a long time, and I still do. It's important to give people a platform and to get their voices heard. But I would always keep myself out of it, keep myself back, try and be objective, let other people say what they had to say. So writing a fictional book then is very different, and you can't help revealing things about yourself, and you have to come to terms with that. That's a big change for a reporter like me.
Blackwatertown, it's a beautiful book.
And thank you.
It is. I really, really enjoyed it, even at the end when I was in pieces. And I remember you saying to me, it's a bit strong. I was in pieces at the end. I was so emotionally invested in the characters by that point.
No spoilers.
But it was just like, no, they've got to read it. It's just a tremendous book. It will take you on a real journey. And I just thought it was really wonderful. And you know, it must have been quite extraordinary for people to be living in that time. And as you say, the stories that came out and your past experiences as a journalist, I mean, you must have seen some terrible things.
I did. Well, a lot of people who were living in Northern Ireland experienced, tragic, awful things. And I guess often we tend not to talk about them so much because there are always people who've experienced much worse things than you have. And trouble came to our family, but we were lucky, I would say, in how we got away with it. And there were lots of other people who were nowhere near as lucky. I suppose I remember some of the more bizarre things. I remember once I was reporting on a riot. It certainly became a riot. And in West Belfast, and it was kind of a good-natured riot, I suppose. And at one stage, people had hijacked a milk float that was, delivering milk in the area. And I was there in my reporter suit as a young man, trying to look smart, and with my recording kit. And people had gathered around the milk float, and they were taking the milk. they weren't really causing terrible harm, but they were throwing it up in the air and the cartons were coming down and splatting. And it was a little bit like a milk fight. And I thought the one thing I absolutely have to avoid is getting covered in milk, because if I come back to the office wounded in some way by a brick or something like that, that would be like a noble, glorious wound. But if I come back smelling of milk and completely drenched in milk, I'll never hear the end of it. That'll just be ridiculous. And, you know, I'll have to leave the country with the shame. But I do remember times in more serious situations. I remember once I was on the wall of Derry. Derry is a walled city on the far side of Northern Ireland from Belfast. Lovely place, and lovely place to visit now. And it has these historic walls circling the historic city. So I was up there, and again, there was more trouble going on, and the nationalist protesters had been driven out of the walled city, and they were throwing things back, I guess petrol bombs and bricks and things like that. And the police were on the walls shooting plastic bullets at them, which they're supposed to be non-lethal projectiles, although they have killed some people, including children. And to get right in the heart of this and do authentic reporting, I thought, well, I have to be right up there with the police officer on the front line. So he was there in his helmet and his visor and his padding on his chest and arms and legs, and he had his firearm and his plastic bullet gun. And I was there crouched beside him in my suit with my recorder. And he kind of looked around at me to say, I know what I'm doing here, but I've absolutely no idea what you are doing here. And I thought, yeah, I probably shouldn't be here at all. But he, you know, try and report on things accurately and authentically, and occasionally unwisely. And luckily enough, I emerged from the various foolish situations I put myself into unscathed over the years, although I had colleagues who were not so lucky. And indeed some were injured, and some unfortunately were killed.
I mean, that's the thing about getting that story, isn't it? You know, you want to bring the authentic feeling, the authentic life to the people that are going to see it. But it is dangerous. Being a journalist in certain situations is a very dangerous occupation, especially people who report in situations of war and things like that. And I don't think I could do it. So, you know, power to you.
Well, the answer is wear sensible shoes so you can run away fast.
Yeah, very fast. And wear a bulletproof vest if you can get one.
Yeah, if you can get
one. What I want to know is, did you use the milk incident in your book?
Well, my book is set in the 1950s, and so I felt that was a safe distance from getting people too annoyed, or I thought that would be a safe distance. However, I'm saving up the milk story for a future book. But I did have the book has provoked some strong reactions, usually really positive ones, like Melanie's, thank you very much again. But I did have somebody say to me, if you don't change the ending, I'm going to come over and punch you in the face.
Oh no, I just said I said to you, I said, why? I was like, mascara running down my face. I mean,
well, the thing is, of course, that threat had the opposite result from what the person intended, because I thought, well, provoking a reaction, that's great. Strong reactions, that's what you want.
As my mum said, no, he's right. I don't think that he could have done it any other way.
Well, apologies for the mascara.
I want a happy one next time, Paul, please. Thank you.
The next one is a lot happier, actually.
Oh, good.
Let's talk about the next one, because you're doing a series set in India.
That's right. So the first book, Blackwatertown, is set in Ireland, which is where I'm from. The one I've finished at the minute, and some people are reading it in over in Britain and in India, is set in India because my wife is from India. And we spend a certain amount of time over there, with her family is over there. And she said, why don't you set something here? Because we're going to be here a lot. So I thought, okay. So I have done. So it's a Delhi hotelier and an Irish nun solving mysteries together. And you might wonder, what's an Irish nun involved? And that's because I discovered, or my wife in particular discovered, that I have kind of an auntie who was a nun and taught in India for many years. Her whole career was there, pretty much. And she, her final position was running one of the main colleges in Delhi, and she was in charge of the children of the Gandhis and the elite of India. But as it also turned out, her very first posting was a primary school in Pune, where, as coincidence would have it, she taught my wife's mum and her mum's sisters.
Wow.
Which seems,
small world,
so unexpected. And so I thought, this is a backstory again that can't go to waste.
No.
So although my story is completely fictional and it's kind of set in contemporary Delhi, and it's I suppose more light-hearted, a bit cozier, less murderous.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
But are you doing a series of books with the same characters in them?
That's the plan, and so there'll be I suppose if you like the number one ladies detective agency, that sort of
And Father
thing,
Brown.
this could be
Yeah.
for you, yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll have various adventures in Delhi and other parts of India, and so it's a great pleasure to be there writing and researching, and I'm kind of learning about it. And hopefully people in India will allow me to, because it's a kind of an Irish Indian crossover.
It sounds marvelous, and it's right up my street. I would love, because I love all of the what I call nice murders. The nice murders. People still die and things, but they're nice. They die nicely over a cup of tea and a scone. So Father Brown and the number one ladies detective. I love that, and Alexander McCall Smith is a favourite of mine, and the way he writes about Botswana is just beautiful, and he takes you there. You get lost and immersed, and you could be there, and I just love it. So I'm going to really look forward to that, Paul.
Thank you. You might also like Robert Thorogood's Marlowe Murder Club.
Yes, I've read that
series. He's the same sort of thing.
Yeah, marvelous.
You also have a new story in the Taking Liberties anthology of short stories coming out shortly. What's that about?
Well, a load of authors who I know from a previous publisher decided to start a new publisher, and the first book from it is going to be an anthology of short stories called Taking Liberties, and I have a story in it called Snuffer, and the subtitle is How Britain Became a Nicer Place.
Oh.
And it's about I suppose the transformational effect of apps and reality TV and I suppose social media, and how through some unexpected turns they transform the character of British society. It's only a short story though, and there's all sorts of different ones in it from writers of different backgrounds. Including my podcasting colleague, Stephen Colgan. He has a story in it too.
Oh, has he?
And it's coming out possibly by the time this podcast is on air.
Oh, well, we'll all look out for that.
Well, let's talk about your podcast. Tell us more about it.
Well, I like writing. I love to read. I read all the time, and I used to do a live radio program interviewing people, often writers. And when I finished doing that, another presenter, Stephen Colgan, and I got together and decided let's do a book program, a book podcast. So it's sometimes on the radio, but it's always streaming online on all the usual platforms. And it's called We'd Like a Word. And that title comes from Steve's background as a police officer imagine a hand on your shoulder, we'd like a word. And we've had all sorts of writers like Graham Norton, Anthony Horowitz, Peter May, and editors and agents and all sorts of people from behind the scenes, poets, non-fiction science writers like Dr. Erica McAllister. And it's very relaxed. And we chat for about an hour and about all sorts of nonsense, and what they write, how they do it, what their methods are, what mistakes they've made, or all that sort of thing. And it started as a fortnightly, although things have slipped a little bit. And so it's every now and then now. But we have great fun doing it. And it's such a pleasure to get together with writers who are either writing important things or just stuff we enjoy. And so if you just Google "We'd Like a Word" and podcast, you'll find it on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you like. Well, it's quite I found it useful to get tips from other successful writers, and so it's a bit like having a privileged conversation, but just letting other people eavesdrop on us.
Yeah, it is a lovely podcast, and if you are a writer or you're interested in writing a literature at all, it is definitely worth checking out, and the details are going across the screen now if you'd like to check it out. But it's worth it. You've had some lovely guests, and you had Julia Donaldson on as well, didn't you? And she does give a lot of interviews, so they have had some really marvelous guests, and as you say, they're really interesting.
She was telling us how I think when she won her Blue Peter Award, and she'd had great fun at the awards ceremony, and she dropped it and smashed it on the way home and said, "Can you give me another one?" They said, "Yeah, but you have to pay for the next one."
Well, at least she sort of dropped it on the way home and not at the ceremony. I wonder if anyone's ever done that. Oh, how embarrassing would that be? That'd probably be me, actually. If I ever got a glass award, I probably would drop it. Not on purpose, but that's just, yeah. Oh, God, your worst nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah. It's always nice having guests reveal sides to themselves that you didn't know before.
Yeah, that's why I like some reality TV stuff, not all, but things like Dancing on Ice or Strictly Come Dancing, when you put a celebrity in a completely different environment that they wouldn't necessarily, you wouldn't think that they would be in, and then you actually see them as a human being, not just the presenter or the personality. You actually get to know them as people. You think, oh gosh, he or she's really quite nice, or maybe not, depending on their personality type. But it is nice, and I love to study human nature. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, well, sometimes after we record a podcast, it's interesting to see which guests buy a drink and which ones don't.
Yeah.
And then you don't invite them back again?
We've rarely had anyone twice, actually. I think we've only so far had Peter May twice, because he wrote an interesting book talking about environmental climate emergency, that sort of thing, into mainstream fiction. So we were interested in that kind of crossover from science fiction or dystopian fiction to normal genre detective stories. And his most recent book is A Winter Grave. And so we thought that was an interesting phenomenon to look at more generally. And so he's the only one we've ever had twice, and that's the reason.
If you could have... he bought you drinks.
Did you buy drinks?
He did.
Did he buy you drinks on both occasions?
Yeah, he did. We like him a lot and would recommend his books.
If you could have anybody at all on your podcast, living or dead, if you could have the choice of anyone that you'd really love to have a chat to, who would it be?
Oh, well, you made that easier by saying living or dead. Well, living, Salman Rushdie, because he was going to come on, to come over and join us, and then COVID pandemic hit and he wasn't able to travel from the United States, and now obviously he was attacked and is thankfully recovering. So he'd be an interesting one. And including people who are dead, Andrea Camilleri, he's one of my favorite writers. I like a lot, a Sicilian writer. And also the greatest living Englishman when he was alive, Patrick Leigh Fermor, who wrote A Time of Gifts about and other books, mainly non-fiction, about walking across Europe as a teenager in 1933, and sleeping in barns and castles, and I think he saw Hitler speak in Munich, all on the way from Rotterdam to Constantinople, as I think it still was then. And he writes lovely books about looking for silence in monasteries or walking around kind of rugged areas of Greece. And he's just wonderful pictures, although sometimes you feel you need to have a dictionary handy as you read it, just to keep up with all the architectural terms and art terms he's talking about. But so Patrick Leigh Fermor, Andrea Camilleri, and Salman Rushdie, they'd be good.
Yeah, they would be good.
Living?
Salman Rushdie, he said. Salman Rushdie, he said, Julie.
Oh yeah, living Salman Rushdie. Yeah. He was thankfully still with us.
Yeah. I beg your pardon. Yes.
Do you know something we don't, Julie?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did survive that attack. Yeah.
So, what would your top 3 tips be for anybody who would like to, I guess, starting out in journalism or broadcasting? What would your top 3 tips be for someone who's just starting out?
Yeah, well, I suppose I give one tip for each kind of category. So for journalism, broadcasting, that sort of thing, I think it's good to get out and meet people and try and build relationships. That's how you get stories. People trust you. You hear things, even if it's not something you can immediately use. And these days, it's harder to do that because people doing so much digitally, and there's wonderful journalism and research that can be done that way. But there's a tendency for people to be kind of phone monkeys, sitting at desks and never getting outside because you're under so much pressure, such short deadlines. But it's just more fun and you feel more alive going out, and you get better stories. So that would be the tip for journalism: get out and meet people. When it comes to writing, I think people are scared to start because they think, oh, it'll be rubbish. What will people think? And I guess the advice would be, don't worry about your first draft. Don't judge yourself. Just write anything. It doesn't matter how bad it is, because everyone discards a lot. Writing is about editing. So you're going to dump a lot of stuff, but you can't dump it unless you do it in the first place. So just write something and don't worry about what anyone will think. That's the best achievement. Most people never even get started, so do that. And when it comes to podcasting, I would say it's good to do it with someone you get on with. So if you're doing it on your own, it can be quite solitary. You've got to arrange the guests. Then the chatting is fine, but then you've got to edit them and do the technical things to post it and have it streaming and all that. So I always look forward to recording our podcasts with Steve, because regardless of the guest, I find him entertaining and I enjoy spending time with him and it's fun. So regardless of some of the jobs involved with it, it's always fun doing stuff with him. So my tip for podcasting would be, like the two of you, do it together. Yeah. Find somebody who it's fun to do things with, and that means you'll stick at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you motivate each other.
Yeah. And also then, if either of us make a mistake, you two may have a different policy. We always tell guests that we're very kind editors. So if they go wrong or need to repeat anything or get the wrong name, that's okay. We can fix that. Or fall off a chair or sneeze or something. Unless I'm editing it and Steve does it. But that also works the other way around. Then he'll leave in my mistakes and I'll leave in his.
Yeah, Julie,
sometimes just for badness.
Julie keeps me on the straight and narrow, and she's very good at picking up things that I miss, especially if I'm writing stuff. She's like my grammar police. She'll double check everything that I do, because I'm just so busy that I just you need a full stop there and you need a comma in there.
Yeah, two heads better than one.
She's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So is it that time, Julie? They get my heart out.
So this is a time now, Paul, where you just have to sit and watch Melanie have her moment.
A little moment, yes.
A little moment.
It hasn't seen the show before. This is one. I don't do it as much as I used to. Come on, just let me have my. Let me have.
It's getting embarrassing. It was downright embarrassing.
It's because we play this little game, Paul, called Values Jam. So we're going to ask you to pick a card, and then we'll talk about what's on that card. But these cards, they're really soft. They're really soft and silky, and I just love them. And they're really tactile, and I just sit and have a little play. And then Julie's got her eyebrows up into her hairline, thinking, "Oh my God, she's off again." But they're lovely. Yeah, look, she's doing it now. Look, bring those eyebrows down. Look. Oh, dear, excuse me. Right. Well, I'll stop now. I'll stop.
Yes, come on, move along.
Let me cough now. I'll get carried away. Right.
We won't edit that out.
They're just my thing. I am. I spoke to Max. We're going to write a film about it. No, we're not, honestly. Right.
So I have to pick a card.
I'm going to run my finger like you yell stop.
Okay, stop.
Stop right in the middle. Right. What have we got? What have we got?
Now, there's no right or wrong answer. Paul.
Just what comes into your head.
Visualize whatever pops into that imaginative head of yours.
Exactly. This will be quite good. He's a creative, so this will be quite good. And this is quite a good card, actually, for something that we were talking about earlier in the conversation, because you chose safety.
Oh.
Okay. So all those risks you took when you were a journalist, what safety was for me? As we're creatives, we're going to ask you creatively about safety. So, Paul, what does safety mean to you? What does it look, feel, and sound like?
Well, creatively, safety is not a good thing, I would say. In fact, just throw it away completely. When I was writing Blackwatertown, various people were advising me to avoid topics, to not write at all. How will people react? There might be some retaliation. People could get very cross, because it was, dealing with tough times and, people running around shooting and crime and all this sort of thing. And I hesitated, and then I eventually thought, well, I want to write it. It's up to me. They can live their lives the way they want to, and you just have to go by what you want to do yourself. I mean, there's a phrase about writing: you have to write as if all your family and friends are dead, as in you're not looking over your shoulder worrying what anyone else thinks or trying to accommodate them. And so that's quite a harsh way of putting it, but I think it's probably a good approach. Just write what you want, and it may be, well, you will have to edit it and change it and make it better, but there's no point in taking care or wearing a safety belt or anything like that. Just write whatever you want, see where it goes. Who knows where you'll end up, and maybe you have a destination. I usually have a destination in mind, but the way I get there could change along the way. And yeah, just set off, leap off, worry about whether you have a parachute after you've left the plane.
Oops.
So safety, I'd go into no safety. No safety catch.
Totally agree with that. And you're a man after my own heart, because I'm similar. And I've said to Julie, it's not just about sort of writing. It's a similar thing if you're a small business owner. Start your business as if your family and friends are dead, because they won't support you. I mean, some might, but we expect our friends and our family to like our stuff and share our stuff and get us visible, but they don't do it. And it's kind of, they think, oh my God, I'm really terrible, not if my own family likes it. And it's like, it took me quite a long while to realize, actually, I'm not trying to please those lot of people. I actually want to please people that are going to invest in my business, buy into my business, and be like me, essentially. So I think that's really, really good advice. What does it sound like?
Sorry, before we go on there, basically you start questioning yourself, because you think, I don't have friends. All I have are Facebook friends who just totally ignore me. So there we go. We when we started Creators, we thought, let's just go for it.
Yes,
And as Stephanie said, whether people like what we're doing or not, we're thoroughly enjoying ourselves.
I must admit, I've found social media a supportive place. Generally, I know that for many people it can be horrible, but I generally find it interesting. I learn a lot, and sometimes it's a good place to ask for help. And yeah, I find it useful, and I think, like, when it comes to reviews of my books, I'm more likely they're more likely to come from people I've never met than
exactly
than friends and family, just genuine readers.
Yeah, exactly. For people that are genuinely interested in you, and we've found this, as say, friends and family on social media is a bit rubbish, but people that are engaging with our stuff is really fantastic. And our main area is LinkedIn, and I found LinkedIn absolutely tremendous. And we've met some wonderful people, haven't we, who are now Creators members, who are just absolutely fantastic people. And I love it. It's my favourite social media platform. I sort of dabble on Facebook, and I only go on Twitter for certain things because I can't take too much of Twitter because of the misinformation and some of the stuff that comes out of Twitter. I thought I can't deal with that. But LinkedIn is a lovely place to be. And
it can be very supportive, as you said, Paul. And we found that with the Creators private networking group, that the members are very supportive of each other. It's been a wonderful journey. It really has.
And talking of support, I believe you have a newsletter out that you are looking for subscribers to as well, Paul, don't you? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. Well, I have a website which is very imaginatively named. It's www.paulwatersauthor.com, and at that website there is information about me and reviews, and there's a really neat map of bookshops that sell my book, because I love bookshops and I wanted to kind of support them back. So people obviously can buy it on Amazon and that sort of thing, but they can also see an interactive map of the British Isles and just hover over where they live, and little dots will appear, and with information about a bookshop local to them. Not in every county, but most of them. And also, at that website, you can sign up to a newsletter. And if you do sign up to that newsletter, you'll get some information, and you'll also get a free copy of Taking Liberties, the new short story anthology, with story from me and other people in it.
Fantastic. And all Paul's contact details have been going across the screen as we speak, so do check that out. Definitely check out With Like a Word, because it is fantastic if you are into as I say, literature and authors. It's really interesting. Depending on your disposition, do buy Blackwatertown. If you're quite a romantic and a bit soft like me, brace yourself for the ending.
Well, I like to think it's got action and humor and romance.
It was like, up until a certain point where I nearly had a nervous breakdown, it was absolutely fine.
Well, you got to have a little shade with your light.
I know, but I suppose this is when people differ, don't they? My mum was kind of expecting it, and so to her it was like a really great book, and I was like, but I really wasn't expecting it, and I was in pieces. And my mum was like, oh, Melanie. I was like, no, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. But it's worth the read because it's beautifully written. It's really beautifully written, and it is an enjoyable read throughout. It really is. And I can't wait for your new ones to come out, because that sounds absolutely thrilling as well. The nun and the is it what is it? The nun and
the hotel owner.
The hotel owner. Okay, so it's kind of like a religious and non.
Do you have a title for the first book in the series?
Well, if I reveal it here, it has never been revealed anywhere else. Well, I'll tell you then. As it's just us, I'll tell you. Okay. It's called The Disappearing Pilgrim. And I suppose the two main characters are Avtar, who's the hotel owner, and Sister Agnes, who is the Irish nun.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it already. It's right up my street. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really quite excited already. Fantastic. Good. Well, we shall wait with bated breath for that. On that note, we are kind of out of time. So I would just like to say a huge thank you to you for giving us your time this morning. It's been delightful to talk to you. And don't leave it so long next time, is all I'll say.
Well, it's a great pleasure joining you. Thank you very much to you both.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a pleasure.